Good evening and welcome to Critical Reasoning by me, Nehil. This is with respect to GMAT and I'll be taking you through a few things as far as critical reasoning is concerned, the very basics of it. Let's keep it lively, let's keep it interactive, and let's begin in a minute or two. So when I talk about critical reasoning, what I'm basically talking about is an argument given to you, the aspects of the argument that you have to talk about. So let's consider a small argument, all right? Say you want to do well in GMAT and you joined iQuanta. There are two aspects to it. One is a premise, it's called a fact, any statement which is a fact, and on the basis of it, whatever you do, whatever you plan to do is the conclusion, right? So the first thing, you want to do well in GMAT. Yes, agreed, that's a fact. Based on this, what step did you take? You joined iQuanta. That makes it the conclusion, right? So I'm just breaking down the argument as a critical reasoning argument works for you. Now, say for example, XYZ wanted to do well in GMAT and XYZ joined iQuanta. What was the underlying thing that was on his mind, his or her mind? Why did he join iQuanta? Now you may say because you want to do well in GMAT. Of course, yes, granted. But then why iQuanta? Think about it. Now what I'm going to give you is the assumption. An assumption is something which is extremely key to the argument. An assumption is something which makes the conclusion valid. If the assumption does not hold true, the conclusion does not make sense. So, some of you might be thinking that iQuanta produces good results, alright. But if iQuanta produces good results, are you sure that it will produce a good result in the next time? We're not sure. Some of you might be thinking it has a good name, okay, but does good name guarantee you good marks? Well, I'm just giving you an example of argument. iQuanta does kind of give you a guarantee, but that's for another time. So some of you might be thinking a good name, okay, big name does not mean that your goal that was doing well in GMAT will be fulfilled. That doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to tell you is the assumption. Now you might come up and say this is very, very obvious. It is but obvious. But please understand, as long as something is not stated, it is an assumption and it also needs to be true for the conclusion to make sense. So I will repeat the argument, okay? The argument has two things. First, a premise or a fact. Second, a conclusion based on the premise that you arrive at. And something is an assumption which needs to be true for the argument to make sense, for the conclusion to hold good. So let's see. The first premise or the statement that I gave you was, you want to do well in GMAT. Okay, given, granted. On the basis of it, you arrived at a conclusion and you joined iQuanta. Okay, granted, given. But what is that gap between your wanting to do well and your joining iQuanta? Well, the gap is the statement, the gap is filled by the statement which is an assumption. So the assumption here would be, iQuanta will help you do well on the GMAT exam. As I said, you might feel like this is very obvious. Of course it is obvious, but it is not stated. And this as a statement needs to be true for the argument to make sense. I'll give you the structure all over again, right? Premise, you want to do well in GMAT. On the basis of it, you arrived at a conclusion. Conclusion is you joined iQuanta. What were you thinking when you joined iQuanta is the assumption. You were thinking that iQuanta will help you do well in CAT. So this is the basic structure of an argument. You generally have a premise or more than one premise. You would have a conclusion and then you would have an assumption. There are different types of arguments as well, but we'll take them up as we go along. Since this is our first interaction, we'll keep it very, very simple, very, very straightforward. Okay? Let's consider another example. So, say Ramesh did not do well in the exam, okay? And Ramesh's teacher goes up to him and says, you haven't scored well, you should read more. So, I'll just give you the example. The argument is, the teacher goes to Ramesh and says, you haven't scored well, you should read more. What are the assumptions? First, is that reading more is possible because the conclusion given is you should read more. What if I said Ramesh is already studying for 16 hours a day? Then it's not possible for him to be able to study more, right? So an assumption is that if your conclusion is you should study more, studying more is possible. Yes, that is an assumption. Now I know it might not make sense to you in the very beginning, but that's why it's called critical reasoning. All the things are very, very key. Something which may be obvious, but as long as it is not stated, is an assumption. Also, it needs to be true for the argument or the conclusion of the argument to make sense. Let's take up one more example. Okay. So Ramesh did not do well, right? Ramesh wanted to commit suicide. Ramesh jumped out of the window. It's a little dark, but please bear with me. It's for the sake of your understanding. Alright. Ramesh did not do well. Sorry, my bad. That was the previous argument. Ramesh wanted to commit suicide. Ramesh jumped out of the window. So, there is a premise and there is a conclusion. The premise is Ramesh did not do well. And the conclusion, Ramesh jumped out the window. What is the assumption? Mind you, an assumption is something which needs to be true for the conclusion to make sense. Some of you might be thinking, why would Ramesh jump out the window? Maybe he was not happy with his life. Maybe he did not do well in the exam. That is not our concern. Our concern is just the fact that he wanted to commit suicide, and on the basis of this, the conclusion was that he jumped out of the window. So what was he thinking when he jumped out of the window will be the assumption. Well, what if I told you Ramesh lives on the ground floor? Jumping out of the window won't do him good, right? He needs to be able to jump from a window high enough for the fall to kill him. So when I say Ramesh wanted to commit suicide and Ramesh jumped out of the window, the underlying assumption is that the window is high enough for the fall to kill him. I hope you're on board with me. Yes? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I have a set of few questions because, as I said, reasoning, any sort of reasoning is best understood through practice. So the more we understand, the more we look at the questions, the more we practice. Now, since it's your first class, I will give you time. This is your first session, so I will give you some time for you to take a look at the questions, frame your answers, and then I'll go ahead with a detailed explanation, right? Before that, a critical reasoning argument is just like a tree. Look at this tree, yeah? You see there are three aspects to it. You see the roots, you see the bark or the trunk, and you see the leaves or the fruits. Now, something which is stable, something which does not move, is the trunk of the tree. Consider that this tree is the argument. Okay? Now, the three parts of the argument, 1, 2, 3. First, the premise. Premise is nothing but fact. There may be one or more than one premises. Based on the premise, we arrive at a conclusion, like just based on this, you arrive at a conclusion which is your flowers and fruits in the case of a tree. Please forgive my handwriting, that's not my strong forte. But, mind you, can a tree stand without its roots? Roots are the utmost important part of a tree. So, unless and until the roots are stable, the tree would not hold good. But can you see the roots? Not really. The roots are not visible, right? So, this is my assumption. This is how you can simply understand an argument. Premise, on the basis of the premise you arrive at a conclusion, but the conclusion cannot hold good without the assumption as in the roots. I hope this makes some sense now. Well, it will make a lot of sense by the end of this class. Let's take a look at the questions. So, how is critical reasoning different from reading comprehension? In reading comprehension, you're given a passage, you have to answer questions based on it. In reading comprehension, we call it an argument. And more than understanding, like comprehension means to understand. More than understanding, in reasoning, you have to analyze the argument, right? Let's take a look at this argument first, and then I'll talk you more through it. Let's go. Alright. The argument states, your advocates have to say this: few gymnast coaches require that their trainees who want to win medals in the international events earmark some time for yoga every day. However, expertise in gymnastics requires tremendous concentration, which yoga fosters. Thus, to help trainees succeed in competitions, gymnast coaches should increase the time allotted for yoga for them. Now, you see the first part, that gymnast coaches require trainees who want to win medals in international events take out some time for yoga every day. Expertise in gymnastics requires tremendous concentration, which yoga fosters. Thus, to help, this is my conclusion, the last line. Thus, to help trainees succeed in competitions, gymnast coaches should increase the time allotted for yoga for them. Now, mind you, it requires tremendous concentration, and we are saying gymnast coaches should increase the time allotted for yoga for them. The question is, which of the following would, if true, most strengthen the argument? Alright, let's take a look at all the options one by one. Gymnast coaches required some time for yoga for their trainees in the past. Now, this is talking about what gymnast coaches required in the past. Mind you, past is not what we're considering. We're talking about what happens in the future. Also, if gymnast coaches required some time for yoga for their trainees in the past, first of all, we're not sure why they required it. Was it to improve their performance? And second of all, we're not sure whether they need it now or not. Okay, so A is not the right answer. B, doing yoga increases trainees' concentration in their gymnastic training. Are we on board with this? Yes, it tells expertise in gymnastics requires tremendous concentration, and doing yoga increases trainees' concentration. So clearly this would help, this would support the conclusion that gymnast coaches should increase the time allotted for yoga for them. B looks good. Let's take a look at C as well. More youngsters who are interested in yoga would take up gymnastics if the time allotted for yoga was increased. See, this is a good idea. It helps the fact that people are more interested in gymnastics. But mind you, that is not our major concern. That is not our primary concern. We are not concerned This is a good idea, agreed. This is good for yoga, but this is not the major concern. The concern is not to increase the number of people participating in gymnastics. So C is a good statement, but does not help the cause. It does not strengthen the argument. D says, some of the most prominent gymnasts began their career with yoga. Well, okay, two things about this. Some of the most prominent gymnasts began their career with yoga, alright. What could happen here is, maybe yoga helped them, or maybe those gymnasts were not good enough gymnasts, or maybe those gymnasts were not good enough with yoga and they had to switch to gymnastics. So this also doesn't strengthen the argument at all. E says, discussion of gymnastic and yoga increases concentration among yoga doers. See, the point being spoken about is discussion of gymnastic, but we are not talking about discussion of gymnastics. We are talking about increasing the time for yoga, right? So the best answer in this case would be B. I hope this makes sense. Good evening all, good evening everyone. So I started off the class at 7 because it was the right time to start. Welcome everyone who's on board right now. Okay, let's take a look at the next question now. Let's see what we have here. Competitors editor. A lifestyle magazine, Homely Housewives, claimed that its survey of subscribers showed that Asian women are more interested in home cooked food than in restaurant food. Its survey, Asian women more interested home cooked than restaurant food. One question was, which do you think about more, restaurant or the joy of cooking? This question is clearly biased and the survey suffers from self-selection bias. Thus, the survey's conclusion may not be correct. Says this question, this is the conclusion of the argument. This question is clearly biased and the survey suffers from self-selection bias. Thus, the survey's conclusion may not be correct. So, the final conclusion is, survey's conclusion may not be correct. This is my conclusion. Each of the following, if true, would strengthen the editor's argument except. So the question is asking us, which of the following would strengthen the editor's argument except. So basically, out of 5 options given to us, 4 of them will strengthen the argument being this, and 1 of them will not. Now, one thing you have to understand is, when I say these would strengthen the editor's argument except, it does not mean that the one which does not strengthen the argument weakens it. It may not be affecting the argument at all, but even if it's not affecting the argument, it is at least not strengthening it. Right? I hope that's clear. Okay. A. The credibility of the magazine's previous surveys has been called into question on countless occasions. The credibility of the magazine. Yes. If it has happened earlier, it may be true that this may be happening right now as well. So the survey's conclusion may not be correct because the credibility is in question. Okay. B says the conclusions drawn in most lifestyle magazine surveys have eventually been disproved by experts. So this is generalizing everything. It says most lifestyle magazines have been disproved by experts. So this is not talking about Homely Housewives at all. It is talking about all the other magazines as well, in which Homely Housewives is also included. So yes, it talks about most lifestyle magazines, but it also takes into purview Homely Housewives. Hence, it strengthens the editor's argument that the conclusion may not be correct because it can be disproved by experts. Okay. C says, other surveys suggest that Asian women are more concerned about restaurant food than they are about home cooked food. We're talking about other surveys suggest they are more concerned about restaurant food than they are about home cooked food. And what does the survey say? More interested in home cooked food than in restaurant food. This is going absolutely against the entire premise. Since it's going against the entire premise, it is going with the survey. With the conclusion. The conclusion says the survey's conclusion may not be correct. This is quite contrary to what is being stated as the premise in the argument. Hence, this cannot be the right answer. The result of surveys involving a self-selection bias are usually tenuous. This is also self-selection, and they are usually tenuous. So this may also be tenuous. Hence, the conclusion may not be correct. So A strengthens the argument, B strengthens the argument, C strengthens the argument, D strengthens the argument. When I say strengthens the argument, I am talking about the conclusion of the argument, this part. Okay? Don't be misled by the premise. E. Other surveys suggest that Asian women are concerned not only with restaurant food and home cooked food, but also with ready-made foods. So this is giving a new dimension altogether. It's not talking about they are concerned not only with restaurant food, home cooked food, but also ready-made foods. No matter what, it does not strengthen this part that survey's conclusion may not be correct. It is neither strengthening nor weakening, and clearly this is my answer. Because if it's not strengthening or weakening, it is at least it is not strengthening. That's my point, right? Okay, so far so good. I hope. Moving on. Alright, let's see. The argument says toughened hiring standards have not been the primary cause of the present staffing shortage in public schools. So we're saying toughened hiring standards is not the primary cause of staffing shortage. Alright? The shortage of teachers is primarily caused by the fact that in recent years teachers have not experienced any improvements in working conditions and their salaries have not kept pace with salaries in other professions. Okay. So look at this argument, okay? Now a conclusion does not necessarily have to be at the end of the argument. It can be somewhere in the beginning, it can be somewhere at the end as well. Over here, it says toughened hiring standards have not been the primary cause of the present staffing shortage in public schools. This is what the author is trying to convey. This is what the author is trying to get through to the people. So, toughened hiring standards have not been the primary cause of the present staffing shortage in public. This is my conclusion. Excuse me. Although it is at the beginning of the argument, it is still my conclusion. Now, the premises given to us or the facts given to us are the shortage of teachers is primarily caused by the fact that in recent years teachers have not experienced any improvements in working conditions and their salaries have not kept pace with salaries in other professions. So let's see. The question is, which of the following, if true, would most support the claims above? We have to support the claims. A says, many teachers already in the profession would not have been hired under the new hiring standards. Okay, now, see, look at this. We're talking about the present staffing shortage. So, we're talking about why people have left. A caters to the fact that how will they be hired, or talks about hiring. Many teachers already in the profession would not have been hired under the new hiring policy. That is not our concern. Our concern is staffing shortage, right? So A goes out. B says, today more teachers are entering the profession with a higher education level than in the past. Okay, yes, possible. Higher education than in the past could be because there is more competition in the field. Maybe there are more educated teachers, and to stay afloat in the rat race, you have to be more educated. But this does not still address the problem of staffing shortage. So B goes out. C says, some teachers have cited higher standards for hiring as a reason for the current staffing shortage. Higher standards for hiring. See, higher education makes no sense. Would not have been hired under the new hiring standards makes no sense. Higher standards for hiring. Again, same problem. We are not concerned with the hiring standards now. We are concerned with the staffing shortage. Why did people leave in the first place? D says, many teachers have cited low pay and lack of professional freedom as reasons for their leaving the profession. Yes, this is in line with what the author is saying. Toughened hiring standards have not been the primary cause of the present staffing shortage in public. It is low pay and lack of professional freedom for their leaving the profession. Hence, the present staffing shortage is not because toughened hiring standards, it is because low pay and lack of professional freedom. Hence, D strengthens the argument. Let's just take a look at E as well. Many prospective teachers have cited the new hiring standards as a reason for not entering the profession. I think you know why this is not the answer. I've already told you. We're not concerned with the hiring standard right now. We're not talking about why people are not being hired. We're concerned with the staffing shortage at present. Okay? So far so good? Great. Let's move on. Right, let's see what the argument says. Many breakfast cereals are fortified with vitamin supplements. Some of these cereals provide 100% of the recommended daily requirement of vitamins. Okay, many breakfast cereals fortified with vitamin supplements, 100% of the recommended daily requirement of the vitamins. This is a premise. Nevertheless, a well-balanced breakfast including a variety of foods is a better source of those vitamins than are such fortified breakfast cereal alone. So what we're saying is a well-balanced breakfast, better source of these vitamins than fortified breakfast cereals. Okay. Which of the following if true, would most strongly support the position above? In many foods, the natural combination of vitamins with other nutrients makes those vitamins more usable by the body than are vitamins added in a vitamin supplements. This looks good, yes. It says in many foods, the natural combination of vitamins with other nutrients make the vitamins more usable by the body than vitamin supplements. So if you're having a balanced breakfast, the vitamins, yes, see, mind you, this provides 100% of the recommended daily requirement. This is fulfilling the requirement of the vitamins, but balanced breakfast is making sure that they are usable by the body. Yes? So A looks like a very, very strong answer. Let's take a look at the other options. B says people who regularly eat cereals fortified with vitamin supplements sometimes neglect to eat the foods in which the vitamins occur naturally. This does not tell us why they should be having a balanced breakfast or why they should be having fortified supplements. It simply is saying that they neglect natural food when they are eating vitamins. So it's neither strengthening nor weakening the argument. See, foods often must be fortified with vitamin supplements because naturally occurring vitamins are removed during processing. It tells us the difference between fortified vitamins and normal vitamins. That's also not rendering any strength to the argument. D says unprocessed cereals are naturally high in several of the vitamins that are usually added to fortified breakfast cereals. Again, the difference between unprocessed cereals and fortified breakfast cereals, not our concern. E. Cereals containing vitamin supplements are no harder to digest than similar cereals without added vitamins. This again is not telling us why natural food is better. It lends nothing to the answer. So the best answer in this case will be A. I hope we're clear so far. Yes? Good. Moving on. Let's see what we have here. A major network news organization experienced a drop in viewership in the week following the airing of a controversial report on the economy. The network also received a very large number of complaints regarding the report. The network, however, maintains that negative reactions to the report had nothing to do with its loss of viewers. So what we're saying is, they experienced a drop in viewership after the controversial report. It received a large number of complaints. Network maintains that negative reactions to the report had nothing to do with loss of viewers. So we're saying, yes, it happened after a controversial report was aired. After they aired a controversial report, their viewership dropped and they received a very large number of complaints. But what they're saying is, the negative reaction to the report had nothing to do with its loss of viewers. So, yes, okay. So maybe it's something else, or maybe, let's see. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the network's position? Let's start with E this time. E says, most network news viewers rely on network news broadcast as their primary source of information regarding the economy. This is simply telling us that viewers rely on net news broadcast as their primary source of information. It does not tell us what is the relation between the report and the loss of viewers. Yeah? We can leave out A. D. This was not the first time that this network news organization has aired a controversial report on the economy that has inspired viewers to complain to the network. So, we're saying this was not the first time. Probably this has happened earlier as well. Now, D, I would have considered D if I knew what had happened after they complained. It simply says this was not the first time this aired a controversial report that has inspired viewers to complain to the network. If this statement would have told me whether there was a loss of viewership as well the previous time, then I would have probably selected this. But it's simply telling me this was not the first time they aired a controversial report and they received complaints. Complaints, of course, complaints are legit. If you air a controversial report, you will receive complaints. But does that necessarily mean loss of viewership? D does not address this aspect. So all those who were going with D, please try and understand this is how we eliminate D. C. Major network news organizations publicly attribute drops in viewership to their own reports only when they receive their complaints about those reports. Major network news organizations publicly attribute drops in viewership to their own reports only when they receive complaints about those reports. So what they're saying is, they've received complaints. They're saying the drop in viewership is because of that. But we're saying the report had nothing to do with this loss of viewers. C, in a way, is kind of weakening the argument, because it says major network attribute drops when they receive complaints. So they have received complaints, probably that's why they dropped their viewership. But we have to strengthen the argument that the report had nothing to do with the loss of viewers. Okay? B says the viewers who registered complaints with the network were regular viewers of the news organization programs. Doesn't make a difference. It does not tell us whether the loss of viewership had anything to do with the report or not. Now let's take a look at A. A says the other major network news organizations reported similar reductions in viewership during the same week. So we're saying the other major network news organizations, even those who did not air a controversial report, mind you, they aired a controversial report, other major network reported similar reductions in viewership during the same week. So this was a general phenomena. It was a general trend. The loss of viewership was a general phenomena. Every major network had, every major network experienced loss of viewership. So the loss of viewership was a general trend, and the report had nothing to do with its loss of viewers. I hope this is clear. Okay. So guys, so far we've studied how to strengthen an argument. Okay. As I said, today being a brief class, we'll keep it short, we'll keep it very simple. Let's see how we can weaken an argument as well. Okay. Let's see what the argument says. Unlike the wholesale price of tomato, the wholesale price of tomato has unlike the wholesale price of tomato, the wholesale price of potato has fallen considerably in the last year. Thus, although the selling price of French fries at fast food outlets has not yet fallen, it will inevitably fall. So what we're saying is, the price of tomato has fallen. Unlike the wholesale price of potato has fallen considerably. Thus, the selling price of French fries at fast food outlets has not fallen, it will inevitably fall. So we're saying, because of the fall in price of potato, the price of French fries would also fall. It's like saying that because cotton has become less expensive, t-shirts will also become less expensive. I think you already see what the inherent flaw here is. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument? Again, let's start with the bottom. The cost of harvesting potato has decreased in the last year. If the cost of harvesting potato has decreased, there will be a fall in the price of French fries as well. So this, if anything, is weakening the argument. Changes in retail prices always lag behind changes in wholesale prices. Okay, this is saying changes lag behind wholesale prices. We're just talking about retail and wholesale. This does not weaken the argument that the price of French fries may not drop. The operating costs of the average fast food outlet store have remained constant during the last year. Well, if the operating costs have remained constant last year and the price of potato is falling, the price of French fries should also fall. Yeah, so this is also not weakening the argument. The wholesale price of tomato is typically higher than that of the same volume of potato. See, we don't need tomatoes for French fries. Maybe for ketchup, yes, but it has nothing to do with the price of French fries per se. Option A, the cost of processing and preservation of potato for making French fries has increased during the last year. Same example, cotton has become cheaper, and we're saying the prices of t-shirts will also drop. But if we say the amount required to make a t-shirt out of cotton has increased, then the prices of the t-shirt may not fall, right? That's exactly the same logic here. The cost of processing and preservation of potato for making French fries has increased. Thereby, the price of French fries will inevitably fall, will be weakened if this statement is true. Right? Now you see, there are all these statements that we've seen. You might be wondering what was the case of assumption and argument, etc. I'll just give you a very basic example. If you state the assumption, the argument is strengthened. If you state the opposite of the assumption, the argument is weakened. Let's consider this, for example. Now, if the cost of processing and preservation of potato for making French fries had not increased, the selling price of French fries would have reduced. Yes, if the cost of processing would have stayed constant, the French fries cost would have reduced. So we're stating the opposite of the assumption. We're saying the cost of processing and preservation has increased. Hence, the cost of the selling price of French fries will not decrease. Clear? Okay. Just about 10-15 more minutes. Please stay with me. Okay, next question. Okay, a drug that is highly effective in treating many types of infection can at present be obtained only from the bark of the ibora, a tree that is quite rare in the wild. It takes the bark of 5,000 trees to make 1 kilogram of the drug. It follows therefore that continued production of the drug must inevitably lead to the ibora's extinction. What we're saying is, it's a very rare tree, and for 1 kilogram of the drug we need 5,000 trees. For 1 kilogram, we need 5,000 trees. Therefore, the argument concludes that continued production will lead to ibora's extinction. Yes? So we're assuming that excuse me, the ibora will be extinct because of the continued production. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument above? A. The drug made from ibora bark is dispensed to doctors from a central authority. It neither strengthens nor weakens the argument. It simply tells us how it is sent out. The drug made from ibora bark is expensive to produce. That is not our concern. It is expensive to produce. Maybe there are potential buyers, because if you see, it's quite rare in the wild, and because it's expensive does not mean that people will not go ahead and purchase it. It does not render any strength or value to the fact that the continued production will inevitably lead to the Ibora's extinction. Okay, let's consider even if the drug is expensive, it will continue to be produced and it will eventually go out of, go into extinction, go extinct rather. C says the leaves of the Ibora are used in a number of medical products. It is only telling us there are other uses as well. It still does not tell us whether we can save it or will it go extinct. The Ibora can be propagated from cuttings and grown under cultivation. Now this tells us it can be grown under cultivation. Since it can be grown under cultivation, it can be propagated from cuttings. Since it can be propagated from cuttings, the tree will not go extinct. We can cultivate it and we can grow it under cultivation. This looks good because this weakens the argument. Now if D is true, continued production of the drug will not lead to the Ibora's extinction, thereby weakening the argument. Let's just take a look at E as well. The Ibora generally grows in largely inaccessible places. Okay, it will be difficult to obtain it, but it will still be obtained. Yeah. So this does not weaken the argument either. Right. Let's take a look at the next question. Alright, let's first try and understand the argument. The argument says, there is nothing cheap about the ongoing saga of counterfeit fashion. The overseas demand for designer fashion at an impossibly low price, regardless of the origin, however dubious, has caused the loss of nearly 4,000 jobs and at least 250 billion pound in revenue for the UK fashion industry last year, according to the World Customs Organization. So we're saying nothing cheap about counterfeit is fake fashion, right? So like you have fakes as well. Especially in India, you find a lot of fakes. So you get a first copy, second copy, third copy. Bisleri becomes a Bilseri, right? A Gucci becomes a Gotchi, so on and so forth. The overseas demand for designer fashions has an impossibly low price. So these fakes are being sent out, right? Regardless of the origin, has caused the loss of nearly 4,000 jobs and 250 billion pound in revenue for the UK fashion industry. As a result, the UK fashion industry has minimal prospect of making money this year by launching their genuine products worldwide. So we're saying they will minimal prospect of making money by launching their genuine products worldwide. So we're saying if they launch their genuine products worldwide, they will not be making a lot of money. Why is that? Because there will be a counterfeit of that product as well, and that will be available at a lower price, and people will generally tend to go for something which is lower priced. All of the following, if true, weaken the argument except, interesting, it says except. So out of these 5 options, 4 options will actually weaken the argument. Let's see. A says 250 billion pound constitute a very minor fraction of the overseas profit. So it costs a very minor fraction. Means they will not be affected much by this loss. Because they will not be affected much, this will not deter them from launching their genuine products worldwide. So this weakens the argument. Yes. B. The Trademark Counterfeiting Act enacted earlier this year has made the sale of counterfeits illegal and punishable with up to $5 million fine and 20 years in prison. What they're saying is they've come up with a very stringent act. Because they've come up with a very stringent act and they're enforcing it properly, chances of counterfeiting being sold become that much less. Right? Stringent norms and their implementation will obviously stop this. So this also weakens the argument. C. Even in the developing countries where the sale of counterfeit fashion products is widespread, a significant market willing to purchase only legitimate product exists. So somebody who wants a Gucci will buy a Gucci, an original Gucci. So they have a good enough reason to launch their genuine products because a significant market willing to purchase only legitimate product exists. This is also weakening the argument that they should not be launching their product. D says, last year all apparels by major brands were known to have been copied and sold at very low prices. Well, if all apparels by major brands were known to have been copied and sold at very low prices, this is a cause for concern. Yes, this does tell you that they should not be launching their genuine products because there is a chance that they will be copied and sold at very low prices. So D does not weaken the argument. If at all, it kind of strengthens the argument. E says, domestic fashion apparel sales were steeply higher last year in the past. Strong domestic sales have been an indicator of higher international sales in the following years. So we're saying yes, in the following years there will be higher international sales because there have been strong domestic sales, which gives the big brand a reason to be launching the genuine products because of the forecast. Indicator of higher international sales. Yes. So this is also weakening the argument. A, B, C and E weaken the argument. D, which does not, becomes my answer. Alright, next question. Although migraine headaches are believed to be caused by food allergies, putting patients on diets that eliminate those foods to which the patients have been demonstrated to have allergic migraine reactions frequently does not stop headaches. Obviously, some other cause of migraine headaches besides food allergy must exist. So we're saying migraine headaches are caused by food allergies. What do? We eliminate those foods, but it does not stop headaches, right? So migraine attacks are supposed to be caused by food allergies. Now we eliminate those foods from the diet, yet the migraine does not stop. Based on this, our conclusion is some other cause of migraine headache besides food allergies must exist. And the question is, which of the following, if true, would most weaken the argument? We're saying it's not just the food, there has to be some other cause. To weaken this argument, we have to say no, there is no other cause, it is the food alone which is causing the migraines. Okay. Let's start with E again. E says, very rarely do food allergies cause patients to suffer a symptom more severe than that of migraine attacks. So we are basically saying that migraine attacks are the most severe symptom of a food allergy. But it still does not tell us that food allergy is to blame. It's not weakening the argument, it's simply telling us that food allergies cause the attack. And if these food allergies cause patients to suffer a symptom more severe, then eliminating them should help. Yes? So E does not weaken the argument. Very few patients have allergic migraine reactions as children live migraine free. Adult lives once they have eliminated from their diet foods to which they have been demonstrated to be allergic. This is saying that yes, if we take away the food which they are allergic to, they have allergic migraine reactions, right? So it still is saying that it was because of the food that there was a reaction. But we have to weaken the argument that some other cause of migraine attack of food allergies exists. So D, sorry, just a minute. Yeah, D reiterates the fact that removing certain foods does not always help. Yeah, okay. See, many patients report that the foods that cause them migraine attacks are among the foods that they most enjoy eating. Okay, granted. They most enjoy eating the food, granted. But if that food is eliminated, that migraine should stop, right? It's not stopping. So this is also not weakening the argument. Food allergies affect many people who never develop the symptom of migraine headaches. See, we're not concerned with other symptoms, we are only talking about migraine headaches. Let's see what A says. A says, many common foods elicit an allergic response only after several days, making it very difficult to observe links between specific food patients eat and headaches they develop. So, making it very difficult to observe links between specific food and headaches. Now, what we're saying is, I ate something today and I had a migraine attack, say a week later. Now, when I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm having a migraine attack, the doctor will not know what I had eaten a week earlier. But you do realize that this attack was because of the food I ate a week earlier. Hence, it's nothing else. The cause of the migraine attack is still the food. It is just that it is very difficult to figure out what foods are causing the migraine attack because they have a delayed reaction. Since they have a delayed reaction, you're not able to figure out what the food was. Hence, you're not able to eliminate them from your diet. Hence, the migraine attacks continue. Clear? Great. So, A clearly weakens the argument. Let's take a look at just one more question, please. The argument says, robot satellites relay important communications and identify weather patterns. Okay? Because the satellites can be repaired only in orbit, astronauts are needed to repair them. Fair. Without repairs, the satellites would eventually malfunction. Therefore, space flights carrying astronauts must continue. So we have satellites which are in orbit and they need to be repaired every now and then, otherwise they'll start malfunctioning. So we have a need to keep sending flights with astronauts out, into the outer space. That's my conclusion. Space flights carrying astronauts must continue. Now, which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken the argument above? We have to suggest why it is not important to keep sending space flights in the outer space. A says, satellites falling from orbit because of malfunctions burn up in the atmosphere. Okay, well, this does not tell us why we should stop sending space flights into the orbit. In fact, if satellites falling from orbit because of malfunction burn up in the atmosphere, it's kind of good. They burn up in the atmosphere and they don't fall onto the ground. Still, it does not tell us why space flights should stop. B, although satellites are indispensable in the identification of weather patterns, weather forecasters also make some use of computer projectiles to identify weather reports. Okay, but mind you, they are indispensable. So we need those satellites no matter what. If we need those satellites, space flights need to continue. Again, not weakening the argument. C, the government, responding to public pressure, has decided to cut the budget for space flights and put more money into social welfare programs. The government, responding to public pressure, has decided to cut the budget for space. Okay, so this is the government's response to the public pressure, and they decided to cut the budget for space flights. So this is being forced. This is just being forced. It does not give a valid reasoning or valid logic to why space flights should stop, should discontinue. This is what is being done under the public pressure. There is no real logic to it. D, repair of satellites requires heavy equipment, which adds to the amount of fuel needed to lift a spaceship carrying astronauts into orbit. Okay, granted, this is a practical issue. It just requires more fuel. But if we need those astronauts, if we have to repair those satellites, we can take care of the fuel will be taken care of. But the flights will still need to continue. Yes? E says, technological obsolescence is something which goes obsolete, which is no longer relevant. Technological obsolescence of robot satellites makes repairing them more costly and less practical than sending new improved satellites into orbit. So what we are saying is, first of all, they're old satellites. We're trying to repair them. They're obsolete anyway. We have new and improved satellites. Sending, first of all, technologically they're far behind, and moreover, they're costing us more money to fix them. So why not send new satellites instead? It will be less costly and and much better for the future because they're technologically advanced. More costly and less practical than sending new improved satellites into the orbit. Clearly, this is what we should be doing instead of this. Hence, E weakens the argument. Right? So today we've taken a look at the basic structure of an argument. We've taken a look at strengthening and weakening of the argument. There are many different types of questions as far as critical reasoning is concerned. You have assumption, conclusion, inference, boldface, flaw, so on and so forth. We'll discuss all those in subsequent classes. This was just an introductory session for you. I hope you've understood what we've studied today here. Thank you for your time. I'll see you in the next session.